My mother-in-law showed up uninvited to my therapy session and demanded to join because she knows me better than anyone. My husband said she just wants to help our marriage and actually let her in. When the therapist asked me how I felt, I said like I'm being ambushed and walked out. I 34F have been married to David 36M for 6 years. We've been going through a rough patch lately, mostly because I feel like his mother Linda 62F has way too much influence over our relationship and David refuses to set boundaries with her. After months of the same fights, we finally agreed to try couples therapy. Our first session went okay. Dr. Martinez seemed professional and unbiased, and David actually admitted that maybe his mom was a little involved in our decisions. I thought we were making progress. We scheduled weekly appointments and I felt hopeful for the first time in months. The problems started during our third session. We were discussing how Linda had rearranged our living room furniture while we were at work, using her spare key. I was explaining how violated I felt coming home to find my personal space changed without permission. David was actually listening and nodding along, which was rare. Then Dr. Martinez's receptionist knocked on the door. She looked flustered and apologetic as she stepped inside. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman in the waiting room who says she needs to join this session. She's quite insistent and says it's a family emergency." My stomach dropped immediately. I knew exactly who it was before Dr. Martinez even asked for the name. "Linda Patterson," the receptionist said. "She says she's the mother-in-law and that there's been a misunderstanding about the appointment time." David's face went bright red. Dr. Martinez looked confused and asked if we were expecting anyone else to join us. I was about to say absolutely not when David cleared his throat. "Actually," he said, avoiding my eyes, "maybe it would be good if she joined us. She knows both of us really well and might have some helpful insights." I stared at him in complete shock. "Are you serious right now? She drove all the way here, Sarah. She just wants to help our marriage." Dr. Martinez looked between us uncertainly. I should mention that adding family members to couples therapy requires discussion and consent from both partners. This isn't typically how we. "It's fine," David interrupted. "Sarah, she's family. What's the harm in hearing what she has to say?" The harm was that Linda had spent 6 years inserting herself into every aspect of our relationship. The harm was that she still called David my baby and acted like I was some temporary inconvenience in his life. The harm was that my husband was prioritizing his mother's comfort over my clearly stated boundaries even in our therapy session. Before I could object, Linda burst through the door like she owned the place. She was dressed up in what I recognized as her important meeting outfit, a navy blazer and pearls that she wore to church and doctor's appointments. She had clearly planned this ambush. "Oh good, I'm not too late," she announced, settling herself into the remaining chair without being invited. "David texted me the address this morning and said how worried he was about your marriage. I've been thinking about it all day and I have so many thoughts about how to fix things." I turned to David in horror. "You texted her our therapist's address?" "I just mentioned we were having some communication issues," David said defensively. "I didn't tell her to come here." Linda jumped right in. "Now, Dr. Martinez, I've known Sarah for 6 years and I think I can provide some valuable perspective on their problems. You see, Sarah has always been a little sensitive about family involvement. She didn't grow up in a close family like David did, so she doesn't understand how we operate." Dr. Martinez looked extremely uncomfortable. "Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your concern, but this is highly unusual. Couples therapy is specifically designed for the married couple to work through issues together. But I'm not just anyone," Linda continued, completely ignoring the therapist's obvious discomfort. "I'm David's mother. I've watched him in relationships before Sarah, and I know what works for him. Plus, I spend time with both of them every week, so I see things they might not notice themselves." I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. My own therapy session had been hijacked by the exact person we were supposed to be discussing setting boundaries with. And my husband was just sitting there letting it happen. "How do you feel about this, Sarah?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. "Like I'm being ambushed," I said, looking directly at David. "Like my own husband conspired with his mother to gang up on me in what was supposed to be our safe space to work on our marriage." Linda scoffed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. Nobody's ganging up on anyone. I'm here to help. You're here because you can't stand the idea of David and me having a conversation about boundaries without you controlling the narrative," I said, standing up. "And David, the fact that you're okay with this tells me everything I need to know about our marriage." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Dr. Martinez called after me, saying we could reschedule and discuss how to move forward, but I was done. As I left, I could hear Linda telling David, "See? This is exactly what I was talking about. She always makes everything about herself." I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, shaking with anger and disbelief. My phone was buzzing with texts from David. "Sarah, come back. We can talk about this. Mom just wants to help. Don't overreact. Where did you go? We need to finish the session. The final text was what pushed me over the edge. Mom says she's sorry if she upset you. Can we all just talk like adults? Mom says she's sorry if she upset me. Not that she ambushed my therapy session or violated my privacy. If she upset me, like my reaction was unreasonable. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. James Chen had handled my sister's divorce 2 years ago and I'd kept his card in my wallet, hoping I'd never need it. When I called his office, his assistant said he had a cancellation and could see me that afternoon. I spent 2 hours in James's office explaining the situation. He took detailed notes and asked specific questions about our assets, David's relationship with his mother, and whether there had been other incidents of boundary violations. When I mentioned that Linda had a key to our house and regularly let herself in, he raised his eyebrows. Has your husband ever acknowledged that this behavior is inappropriate? James asked. He always says she's just trying to help or that I'm being too sensitive. Today he literally invited her into our marriage counseling session. James nodded grimly. I've seen this pattern before. When one spouse consistently prioritizes their parent over their marriage, it rarely improves without serious intervention. The fact that this happened in therapy suggests he's not willing to change. By 6 p.m., I had filed for divorce. James's office prepared the papers while I waited, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting an equitable division of assets. The retainer fee cleaned out most of my personal savings account, but I felt clearer than I had in months. I drove home to find David and Linda sitting at our kitchen table with takeout containers, apparently having a nice dinner together. When I walked in, they both looked up expectantly, like I was supposed to apologize for leaving therapy. How was the rest of your session? I asked pleasantly, setting an envelope on the table between them. David looked confused. Sarah, we couldn't really continue without you. Dr. Martinez suggested we reschedule for next week and talk about including family members in therapy going forward. That won't be necessary, I said, sliding the divorce papers out of the envelope. I found a different solution to our marriage problems. Linda gasped and clutched her chest dramatically. Sarah, what is this? Divorce papers? David, you've been served. Since you and your mother want to make decisions about our marriage together, you can handle the divorce together too. David stared at the papers in shock. Sarah, this is insane. We had one bad therapy session and you're filing for divorce? We had one therapy session where you ambushed me with your mother after I've spent 6 years asking you to set boundaries. This isn't about one bad session, David. This is about the fact that you'll never choose our marriage over your mother's feelings. Linda stood up, her face red with indignation. This is exactly the kind of dramatic overreaction I was trying to help Dr. Martinez understand. Sarah, you can't just run away every time something doesn't go your way. I laughed, actually laughed. Linda, you showed up uninvited to my marriage counseling and you're calling me dramatic? You literally cannot handle the idea of David and me working on our relationship without you being involved. I'm his mother. I have a right to be concerned about his happiness. You have a right to be concerned. You don't have a right to show up to our private therapy sessions or rearrange our furniture or make decisions about our marriage. But clearly David disagrees, so you two can be as involved in each other's lives as you want. Without me. I went upstairs and started packing a bag. I could hear them talking frantically in the kitchen, their voices getting louder and more agitated. About 20 minutes later, David came upstairs. Sarah, please. Let's talk about this rationally. Maybe I should have asked you before letting Mom join the session, but divorce? That's extreme. David, do you honestly not see the problem with what happened today? He sat on the bed, running his hands through his hair. Look, maybe Mom shouldn't have just shown up like that. But she was genuinely trying to help. She loves both of us and wants our marriage to work. She wants to control our marriage. There's a difference. That's not fair. She just has opinions about things. She has opinions about our sex life, our finances, our career decisions, our vacation plans, what I cook for dinner, how I decorate our house, and apparently our therapy sessions. When does it end, David? She's my mother, Sarah. I can't just cut her out of my life. I never asked you to cut her out. I asked you to set boundaries. I asked you to tell her she couldn't let herself into our house whenever she wanted. I asked you to tell her our private conversations weren't her business. I asked you to choose our marriage over her feelings, just once. And instead, you gave her our therapist's address. David was quiet for a long moment. I didn't think she'd actually show up. But when she did, you let her stay. Even after seeing how upset I was. Even after the therapist said it was inappropriate. You chose her comfort over mine. I finished packing and headed for the door. David followed me downstairs, where Linda was still sitting at the kitchen table, dabbing her eyes with tissues. Where are you going? David asked. To my sister's house. My lawyer will be in touch about asset division and the house. Linda looked up with red eyes. Sarah, I never meant for this to happen. I just thought if we all talked together. Linda, I genuinely believe you thought you were helping. But you've spent 6 years treating me like an outsider in my own marriage, and today proved that David agrees with you. So I'm making it official. I left my house keys on the counter and walked out. As I got in my car, I could see them through the kitchen window, Linda hugging David while he stared at the divorce papers. Update 1. It's been a week since I left, and the fallout has been intense. David has called and texted constantly, cycling through anger, bargaining, and desperate apologies. The messages started with "This is ridiculous, come home so we can talk like adults," and have evolved into "I'll do anything to fix this, please don't throw away our marriage." Linda, meanwhile, has been telling everyone who will listen her version of events. According to my sister-in-law, David's brother's wife, Linda is claiming that I completely lost it during therapy and filed for divorce as revenge for her trying to help our marriage. She's apparently been calling it a mental breakdown and suggesting that I need professional help for my anger issues. The irony is not lost on me. What Linda doesn't know is that Dr. Martinez called me 3 days ago. She wanted to check on my well-being and mentioned that she's been practicing for 15 years and has never had a family member show up uninvited to a couples session. She said David and Linda stayed for another hour after I left, with Linda doing most of the talking about my history of overreacting to family involvement. Dr. Martinez said she spent the entire time trying to explain professional boundaries and why what happened was inappropriate, but Linda kept interrupting to give examples of times I'd been unreasonable about family events. David apparently just sat there letting his mother analyze my mental state to our therapist. The best part? Dr. Martinez said that when she finally ended the session, Linda asked if she could schedule individual appointments to better understand how to help David through this difficult time. When Dr. Martinez explained that would be a conflict of interest, Linda asked for a referral to another therapist who could help her develop strategies for dealing with Sarah's hostility toward family. I'm not making this up. David showed up at my sister's house yesterday, looking like he hadn't slept in days. My sister Amy answered the door and told him I wasn't ready to talk, but he convinced her to let him leave a letter. The letter was 3 pages of handwritten apologies and promises. He acknowledged that letting Linda into our therapy session was wrong. He said he understands now that his mother has boundary issues and that he should have protected our private space. He promised to go to individual therapy and work on setting limits with Linda. But then, in the 3rd paragraph, he wrote, "I know Mom can be overwhelming sometimes, but she really does love us both. Maybe we can work out a compromise where she's still involved in our lives but in a way that doesn't make you uncomfortable." A compromise. Where his mother is still involved in our marriage, just in a way that doesn't make me uncomfortable. He still doesn't get it. Update 2. 3 weeks post-divorce filing, and things have gotten even weirder. David has apparently been going to individual therapy, which I learned about through my sister-in-law. But here's the kicker, Linda has been driving him to the appointments and waiting in the parking lot. When Amy told me this, I literally laughed out loud. The man is in therapy to learn about boundaries with his mother, and his mother is literally driving him there. You can't make this stuff up. Last week, I got a Facebook message from Linda herself. She'd written a novel-length message about how much she loves both David and me, and how devastated she is that her attempt to help caused such a misunderstanding. She said she's been praying about the situation and feels called to reach out directly to clear the air. The message included a detailed explanation of her perspective on the therapy incident. According to Linda, she had been inspired to come to the session after David expressed worry about our marriage. She said she felt led by God to offer her insights because she's known David his whole life and could provide valuable perspective on his needs and communication style. She also mentioned that she's been researching family therapy approaches and found several articles about how including extended family can strengthen marriages. She attached 3 links to articles about multi-generational family therapy, apparently missing the part where those approaches require consent from all parties. The message ended with an invitation to meet for coffee so we could work through this misunderstanding like the family we are. I screenshotted the entire message and sent it to my lawyer, who said it could be useful evidence of her inability to respect boundaries even after I filed for divorce. I didn't respond to Linda's message, but apparently my silence was interpreted as me needing more time to process. 2 days later, she sent a follow-up message saying she understands I'm going through a difficult period and that she's praying for God to soften my heart toward family reconciliation. Then yesterday, things escalated. I was at Target buying groceries when I spotted Linda 2 aisles over. I thought about leaving, but I was almost done shopping and didn't want to let her control my behavior. I tried to avoid her, but she apparently saw me too. She cornered me in the cereal aisle with tears in her eyes, saying how much she missed me and begging me to reconsider the divorce. She said David was falling apart without me and that she felt terrible about causing problems in our marriage. I just wanted to help, she kept repeating. I love you like a daughter, Sarah. Can't we work this out? I told her calmly that our relationship was over and that she needed to respect my space. But then she said something that made me realize how deep the problem really goes. But David needs both of us in his life. He's not good at making decisions on his own. He's always needed guidance from the women who love him. The women who love him. Plural. Like we're some kind of committee responsible for managing David's life. I told her that David is a grown man who can make his own decisions, and that I was no longer interested in being part of her team approach to his life. Then I left my card and walked out of the store. When I got home, I had 4 missed calls from David and a text saying Mom told me she ran into you. She said you seemed really upset. Can we please talk? I texted back, your mother approached me in a store to discuss our divorce after I've made it clear I want no contact with either of you. This is exactly why I'm divorcing you. His response, she's just worried about you. She doesn't understand why you won't let us help you through this. Help me through this. Like my divorce from him is something I need his mother's assistance to handle. I forwarded all of these messages to my lawyer. James said we can file for a restraining order if the contact continues, and that Linda's behavior is actually strengthening our case by demonstrating the exact boundary issues that led to the divorce. The divorce should be finalized in about 6 weeks. David has agreed to let me buy out his share of the house, so at least I won't have to deal with selling it. I've already had the locks changed and my security system updated. Amy asked me if I ever regret walking out of that therapy session. The answer is no. That moment showed me exactly what the rest of my marriage would look like, me, David, and Linda making decisions together about my life. I'm not interested in being part of that triangle anymore. Some marriages can survive boundary issues with in-laws. But when your husband literally invites his mother into your therapy session and sees nothing wrong with it, you're not dealing with a boundary problem. You're dealing with a man who will never prioritize your marriage over his mother's feelings. I'm 34 years old and I finally get to live in a house where no one shows up uninvited to rearrange my furniture. It's amazing how peaceful life can be when you're not constantly fighting for space in your own marriage.